Joining us now, Rabbi Yaakov Menken. We love having him on because he knows what's going on. He's in New York. Probably a Mets fan. Mets are winning now, though. But if he's a Yankee fan, bad news. They're not winning. And Aaron Judge, see you later, he's out for how long? A long time. Oblique injury. Could be months before he comes back. So they got a lot of problems on the Yankees, a lot of injuries. But if he's a Mets fan, well, they got great pitching. And they got a heck of a shot to win that division and beat Philadelphia. That's how we weave baseball in. Meantime, the Brooklyn Nets eliminated Rabbi. They're out. Sorry. And, of course, the Knicks, they finished last, and that is the sorriest franchise in the NBA. So nothing good going on there. Rangers, they're not winning either, and neither are the Islanders. So what's going on in New York? All you have is the Mets. Joining us now is Rabbi Yaakov Menken. Rabbi, good to have you with us.
Good to be here, but I'm John. I'm from Baltimore.
Oh, my goodness. It's even worse, right?
Yeah, it happens to be that yesterday my kids watched the Orioles beat the White Sox 9-1.
Were they home? Was that a home game?
Yeah, it was a home game last night.
I'd say the Orioles, they're 9-16, which, of course, they're going to finish last, but they're doing a classic rebuild, except for Chris Davis, who they're stuck with for the next 5 years or whatever. They're doing a classic rebuild. Look, I'm an Astro fan. I went through this. We had tell your kids. I went 3 years where we lost over 100 games. 1 year we lost 115 games, almost matching the 62 Mets. So I get it, but you get the draft picks, you accumulate those, you basically get rid of all your veterans, and you just got to rebuild. And they'll be back. They'll be back. No question about it.
I remember when I was learning up, and first of all, I went to college in Princeton, and then I was learning in upstate New York. And I do recall someone doing a mock takeoff on a popular song then at the time. You'll probably recognize it as soon as I do the line, which was, the Mets will lose 500 games, the Mets will lose 500 more.
I remember that. That was, I think the guy that did that song is the guy that did all the takeoff songs, Wild Al something or Crazy Al.
I don't think that was Weird Al.
Weird Al Yankovic.
The voice was not Weird Al. I know who Weird Al is, and that wasn't Weird Al's voice. But
Weird Al Yankovic, I think his name was.
Pretty fly for a rabbi.
That's pretty good, Rabbi. All right, now, Rabbi, you had an op-ed out the other day that I wanted to talk a little bit about, and you were really blasting this freshman representative that you said really doesn't get she doesn't get 9/11. She doesn't get what happened. This is Ilhan Omar from Minnesota. Can you elaborate a bit on this?
The truth is, what I was really reacting to was the reaction of the left wing when President Trump correctly criticized her when she made this comment about how some people did something and all of us were losing our rights. I mean, I understand what she was trying to say in context, but for her, minimizing terrorism is not a new thing. And for people to claim that the president's comment was somehow inciting violence, it was just absolutely ridiculous. And it was a reversal because the person who was actually inciting the violence is Ilhan Omar.
What is the deal? Why don't the Democrats? You've got her comments. You've got the comments of Tlaib in Michigan. Why no reaction from the left? Why no sanctions? Why no not letting her be on the Foreign Relations Committee? I mean, Steve King on the Republican side from Iowa makes a couple of comments that were ill-advised, and he gets kicked off of every committee. He does not serve on a single committee. Meantime, she's still on Foreign Relations.
It's an amazing double standard. I mean, for what it's worth, as far as I could tell, it sounded like Steve King got a raw deal, meaning that it was the New York Times that reported his comments the way they were. His reaction to that was, he said, that's not what I said. Mm-hmm. They moved a period in such a way as to make it look like I was saying white nationalism, when did that ever become a bad thing? Mm-hmm. And that's not what I said at all. And yet they went off on their, flying off against him. And it was probably because he has a history of putting his foot in his mouth. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? Ilhan Omar also has a history of putting her foot in her mouth. And instead of actually dealing with it and addressing it, they were supposed to have a resolution condemning anti-Semitism. The Democrats completely failed. They came up with this limp-wristed anti-hate resolution. The only people first of all, it put Jews behind Pacific Islanders in terms of people facing hatred, and the only people not listed at all were white Christians. Like, for example, Nick Sandman and his friends at Covington High School, Catholic High School, who were obviously picked on precisely because of a whole series of identity characteristics. And that's the Democrats don't condemn. They say that's not a problem.
I mean, it's just the double standard is crazy what is going on right now. And the fact that she could have made those statements about 9/11, some people did some things. It's incredible that then the legacy lamestream, lying fake news media, they just hide it, or they sweep it, or they excuse it. And I tell you what, if a Republican were to say any of this stuff, they'd be absolutely run out of the party, run out of Congress, run out of everything. That's
absolutely true. It's all about the identity politics. It's supposedly because she's a Muslim black refugee woman.
Right.
And that's really offensive. I mean, that happens to be that's flat out racist, because she's saying the same things that David Duke says, and she gets precisely the same reaction. When you point fingers at the people saying that, hey, wait a minute, she's saying the same things that David Duke is, and you call them the racists, guess what? That's racism.
Unbelievable. We're with Rabbi Yaakov Menken from Baltimore, and he is the spokesperson for CJV, which is the Coalition for Jewish Values, and been there a very long time representing that organization. Rabbi, I want to get your reaction here to a couple clips I want to play, if you don't mind, if you can hang with us a little bit. And I'm going to start with, I want to talk a little bit about your reaction to the Mueller report and everything that's going on with that right now. Let's get Hogan Gidley. Here's Hogan Gidley. He was on our show yesterday, but also on Fox News. Here's Hogan Gidley, who's the deputy press secretary to the president, saying the only sham that existed was the lie pushed by the Democrats.
What I am concerned about, though, is that Democrats like Jerry Nadler continue to try and attack this president and attack members of this administration repeatedly. He's not going to learn anything else about Don McGahn or this administration that Bob Mueller didn't find in 2 years of wasted time and energy. The only thing he's going to gain, quite frankly, are maybe some political allies at the far left who are conspiracy theorists and think somehow that this was a sham. But in fact, the only sham that existed was the lie that was pushed by the Democrats and so many in the mainstream media on this president and his administration. So I don't think they would find anything different than this entire report laid out. We were completely transparent, and we allowed countless hours of testimony, 1.4 million pieces of paper. And so the conclusion is no collusion, and Democrats need to get over it, even though they want it to be true.
Last topics.
But it's not going to end, Rabbi. The Democrats keep pushing it. Now they want more subpoenas, more testimony, unredacted version. They're trying to just create the hoax where it doesn't exist. What do you make of this?
It's look, you're taking me out of my area of expertise, obviously, and I don't claim to be, the expert. I'm sounding like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez now. I'm not the expert on global politics in this matter, but of course she had a degree in international relations, and she was supposed to know where Palestine is before she talked about it. But in this case, what I can certainly say is that the Democrats have shown a desire to attack the president, no matter how ridiculous. It's the exact same thing when they reversed the matter of Ilhan Omar to call the president inciting violence when he was merely pointing out the horror of what she had said, juxtaposed with what actually happened that day. In this particular case, I think it sounds completely crazy to me. I do not claim to have read the 400-page Mueller report, but for him to return that there was clearly no evidence of Russian collusion, And then they're going after, well, maybe we can find something wrong, something under, they're just trying to gum the works of government. And it was obvious that the president recognized this early on. I don't understand how you call it obstruction of justice when the target of an investigation, who of course knows it's false, he says, look, I know this didn't happen. And he was right. It didn't happen. He knows it's nonsense. And he tries to convince people that it's nonsense and get it to go away. And then they claim he's obstructing justice. No, I'm sorry. He knew that he was innocent. Therefore, he was actually pursuing justice. Go away. I'm an innocent guy. Let me run the country here.
You say you're not an expert on this, and that is probably one of the best lines I've heard, that it was actually the pursuit of justice and not obstruction because he committed no crimes. I think you're right about that. So, Rabbi, being that I got you out of your comfort zone and you're on a roll, let's get to, that's my job. Let's get to cut 3. This is Lindsey Graham. So you come on my show and you have a topic, but now you get to comment on everything, including baseball. Here is Lindsey Graham, Senator of South Carolina, saying, the Democrats are just going to stampede to impeach Trump. And I want to get your reaction to this. Lindsey Graham, cut 3.
The idea that the Mueller report is not the final word on all things Trump, Russia, collusion, and obstruction is news to me. I thought we all trusted Mueller. So here's what I think is going on in the House. There's going to be a stampede to impeach President Trump. They're going to use the Mueller report, anything they can find to try to destroy his presidency. Nancy Pelosi's not in charge of the Democratic Party. The radical left is in charge. So I expect that they will be impeachment proceedings against President Trump. And the Mueller report, to me, is vindication of President Trump. They're going to be stampeded to impeach Trump because they hate him so much. And I hate it for the country, I hate it for the president, but it's going to result in him getting reelected. The media is not covering the Trump presidency. They're trying to destroy it. The Democratic Party doesn't accept the fact that President Trump won. So at the end of the day, we're just going to have to deal with this in 2020 at the ballot box.
What do you think of that, Rabbi?
I think that is his line there is that the Democrats cannot accept the fact that Trump won. That they're just trying to destroy. They're not actually trying to run the country. I mean, the idea that they're going to hold hearings now after Mueller produced this enormous report, that they're going to go back and say, oh, no, we're going to investigate it again, and then we're going to investigate it again, and then we're going to investigate it again. They're not trying to actually run the country here. They're just trying to obstruct the president. This is what the president knew was going on during the initial phases of the Mueller investigation. When he made that comment that the media made so much of, when he said, I'm bleeped. It was recorded in the Mueller text that that when the special counsel was appointed, and he was so angry at Jeff Sessions for letting that happen, because he knew it was going to waste a tremendous amount of time. Mm-hmm. Look at the amount that Trump has gotten done in the last few years. And then imagine how much more could he have gotten done if hours out of every day of every employee in that office were not spent on this nonsense investigation.
Right. I mean, that is a great point, because it sucked up so much of everybody's time in dealing with this, which was all nonsense. So it's, when the New York Times and others were deriding the president's comments by somebody that made notes about, Jeff Sessions went in there and told him about the special counsel, and he was upset and said, I'm bleeped, and this is the end of my presidency. And everybody's, that's an indication he's guilty. I mean, how was he supposed to react? Oh, wow, thank you. I love special counsels. I mean, it's absurd. Of course he's going to be upset over it, because if you look at the history of special counsels for presidents in this country, they eat up a tremendous amount of time, money, and resources. So he's like, now I have to deal with this for no reason. So you would be upset too, right?
He reacted exactly the way an innocent man would react to that news.
Exactly.
Precisely.
Yep.
There's not a word of difference in his reaction versus what you would expect to hear from an innocent man who knew that this was nothing more than a colossal waste of time, money, and resources that could be better spent elsewhere.
We're with Rabbi Yaakov Menken, and he is from the Coalition for Jewish Values, CJV. All right, so now I'm going to get to sanctuary cities. And here's a great quote I'm going to get your reaction to. This is from South Bend Mayor, newly minted Democratic candidate Pete Buttigieg, I think his name is, if I'm saying it right. And he's the new darling of the fake news lying media. They love this guy, and they're propping up his campaign for president. He's coming from nowhere. He was asked yesterday about, well, what do you think about making your city, South Bend, a sanctuary city? Here was his answer. I want to get your reaction to it, Rabbi. Cut 5.
One of the things I've noticed, because we were trying to figure out in South Bend what this meant when the Department of Justice was threatening mayors with withdrawing our JAG funds and grant funds for the police department based on whether we were a sanctuary city, is they couldn't actually tell us what that means. I regard us as a welcoming city. Some conservative talk show hosts may say that makes us a sanctuary city. I don't know. Here's what we do in South Bend. We make it very clear that our South Bend Police Department is not responsible for enforcing federal immigration policy. They've got enough to worry about trying to keep neighborhoods safe. And by the way, it's harder for them to do their job if residents in our community, many of whom are Latino and some of whom are immigrants and some of whom are undocumented, are afraid to even talk to them, even if they know something that might help them address or prevent a crime, because they've been led to believe that our local law enforcement, whose only responsibility is the safety of our community, are being conscripted somehow into doing the job of federal immigration authorities. So you can call it whatever you like. That's our policy. We're a welcoming city, and I guess the president thinks America's full. We're not.
Well, then I say the president should take all the illegals that are being caught and released and dump them in South Bend. Every single one of them. Just put them on Greyhounds. I mean, they're welcoming, right? They're open for business. They want them. I mean, I don't want them in my community because, you know, we overrun schools and we have our own tax issues and crime and whatever. So I don't want them in Chesapeake, Virginia, where I live. So he wants them. So why not put them all on it? Let's put them on Amtrak. Let's get them all up to South Bend, like, you know, maybe 20, 30,000, maybe 50,000. Dump them in the middle of the city, and it's welcoming, right? It should be fine. Don't you agree?
It's tremendously lousy policy to have this idea that we're going to welcome people who are illegal immigrants for a host of reasons that actually begin with the home countries from which they come. This is a policy, I mean, everybody understands that the United States has a higher economic standard and a welfare system that takes care of everybody. Okay, great. So therefore, the able-bodied workers, the people who really want to succeed in these other countries, we're going to invite them to leave their home countries, make an arduous and dangerous journey up here along with their young families, and try to make a new life here in America, leaving the countries that they've just left behind to rot. The money that we're investing in helping these people settle here in America and take advantage of America's services could be much better spent actually helping the economy grow in their home countries and helping democracy flourish in their home countries.
I just want to call its bluff. I just want to dump. I don't even say dump. I want to transport 50,000 immigrants, illegal immigrants that broke the law, families with the whole catch and release, whatever's there, wherever they're from. I want to put them on buses, and I want to dump them in the middle of South Bend. And I would like him to greet the buses, be there all day, hand out food and money, cash, whatever's in his pocket, hand it out, and borrow money, get credit cards, and then figure it out. Because he says they're welcoming, and he doesn't want the police involved, and he said he doesn't want them to be conscripted to do federal law enforcement work. I don't know what that means. I mean, if you run a police department and there's a federal crime, you try to be involved in it. I don't know what this guy means on any of this, but I would love the president, the Justice Department, just the DHS, call his bluff, 50,000 in South Bend, let him get off the campaign trail, go back there, and then figure it out and explain to the residents of South Bend why they're welcoming these people and what they're going to do for them, and that, you know, people should open up their homes and have them, you know, live with them and give them food and money. That's what they should do. And if that works, maybe I would change my attitude, Rabbi. But right now, I think all these people are full of crap because they don't want them in their backyard. They don't want them in their homes. They don't want them in their communities. All they want to do is shove them off on somebody else and somebody else's tax dollars. They're certainly not living in Nancy Pelosi's house. And when the president threatened about dumping them in San Francisco, they all went crazy, including DiFi. So hypocrisy, lies, they're full of crap. Thank you for letting me vent, Rabbi Yaakov Menken. You're like my therapist. Thank you.
Anytime.
Coalition for Jewish Values, and unfortunately, an Orioles fan. However, the Ravens, big NFL draft tonight. We'll see what happens, right? John Fredericks Radio Network.